Good evening and welcome to the Pittsburgh Public Schools September Business and Finance Committee meeting. It is Monday, September 8th, 2025. My name is Emma Yord and I am the chair of the Business and Finance Committee. Tonight we have 4 items on the agenda: a review of our year-to-date financials. Is it just the review of the year-to-date financials?
It's just those are the agenda items that I'll go over, but it's just one item, a financial update.
Okay, great. Thank you. So at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Ron Joseph.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. So tonight's meeting will serve as an update on our financial results through the first 7 months of the calendar year. So as part of tonight's agenda, I'll do a review of the year-to-date financials through the month of July and how that impacts our financial forecast going forward. I'll also discuss the impact of the budget impasse. Then I'll give a kind of update on where we are in terms of our budget planning and then next steps. So as far as our state revenue through the first 7 months of the year, our basic education subsidy is up slightly from this point a year ago in 2024. Our special education subsidy is lagging behind last year's, as well as our transportation, but this is likely due to the current budget impasse that we're in. We have no state budget, and there are certain subsidies that we would have received in July, certain subsidies that we would have received last month that we are no longer receiving because there's not a state budget. So that is showing up in some of our year-to-date numbers for our state revenues. When we look at our local revenues, we see a common trend from previous years. Our current year real estate tax is down from the prior year, so we're looking at about $6 million down from the prior year, but then, or more like $7 million down from prior year, but we see that our prior year real estate collections are delinquent tax collections for everything that was levied in any year prior than 2025. We see that's up compared to the prior year, so we're seeing strong prior period collections, but our current period collections are down. Our earned income is slightly down in both our prior and our current period, but that's due to a timing issue, and we expect that will correct itself in the collections that we see in the month of August. And our really transfer taxes are down, and that's based on the real estate activity, real estate sales that we would see in the city. So based at this point last year, we have less really transfer tax coming in. That was our revenue. So now if we go to our expenditures and looking at our major expenditure categories, our salaries are up. Salaries and benefits are both up compared to last year. That's due to increases in actual salaries based on our contracts and our annual increases, and also I believe we're filling some of those positions. So I know that Ms. Short had requested information on vacancies, and we'll hope to bring that as part of the full package when we're talking about at our budget workshop. So don't have that right now, so I know you're probably going to ask about it, but we'll make sure that we get something together for the October budget workshop. Our transportation is slightly down from the prior year, and our charter school numbers are up from the prior year. So this is due to increased charter tuition rates as well as increased charter enrollment. Our utilities are up due to various utility increases such as stormwater fees and also capacity fees that we're paying on our electrical, and our tax refunds are down for prior year tax refunds, but we're still seeing an increase in current period tax refunds. So for tax refunds for the current year, I believe issued around $4 million in those. That won't be seen in this number right here, but this is just a comparison of the prior period tax refunds that we paid out, and that's down from last year. Hopefully it's not as high as the $13 million we paid out last year. So just a summary of the year-to-date financials. So we see that this year, in this 7-month period of time, our general fund balance increased by about $38 million, but that's down compared to last year. So that reflects that we are relying on our fund balance to fund our operations, and also that you see some of that disruption from not having some of that state revenue coming in. In terms of fund balance, Our fund balance is broken out into two components. We have about $66 million that's free for future uses, so future years fund balances and other expenditures, and we have $55 million that's committed right now for specific purposes such as contractual arrangements that we have, contracts that we've engaged in that we have reservations for that on our fund balance. On our actual revenues at this point in time are greater than our actual expenditures by $37.7 million, but that's something that we typically see at this point of year because we've gotten the majority of our tax revenues in at this point in the year, and we've had some large expenditures that we haven't had to pay, such as debt service or PSERS, employer quarterly contributions. So just breaking our revenues down even further, so slightly up from last year, we see the big increases in prior year real estate tax collections, our tuitions from other districts, and basic education subsidy. In terms of expenditures, our expenditures are up compared to last year, and that's a big part are the approximately $9.5 million that our salaries and benefits combined are up from the prior year. So this is a look at our current forecast. As you can see, we are doing slightly better than we were projected at the start of the year. So instead of a $28.1 million deficit, we're projecting about $21 million deficit. We will be project to be out of fund balance compliance at the end of the year, but we will have sufficient fund balance to balance the 2026 budget at this point in time. But based on this current projection, we would run out of money at some point in 2027, and we wouldn't be able to pass a budget that relied on fund balance to balance it in 2027. One thing to note is that when you see our revenues for the based on what we adopted last year to this year, we see that dip, and that dip is largely due to our real estate taxes, lower than anticipated collections, and you see it kind of levels off for the next year with hopefully rebounding in 2027 if we're not seeing any further decreases in real estate taxes. So we talked a lot about real estate taxes and the impact on the lowered reassessments and lowered assessments appeals that we've been seeing. So, and we don't have a reassessment in place. We still have a lawsuit in place trying to compel a reassessment, or we're party to that lawsuit. But one thing I wanted to show was the impact of a possible millage increase. That's something that we have not done for a few years. So just to make the board aware that we cannot raise 2026 taxes beyond 4%, and that's the Act 1 index. So currently our tax millage rate is 10.25 mils. An increase would increase up to the Act 1 index, would increase that to 10.66 mils, which is an increase of 0.41 mils. And that should lead to an increase in current year tax revenue, real estate tax revenue of $6.9 million. So if we look at the impact on the forecast, we see that it provides us with a slight improvement, and that carries through to the following year, but we still are running a sizable deficit, and we still need major structural changes to ensure that we can continue to maintain district operations and not have to enter a territory of asking for advances on our subsidies from the state, or potentially falling under financial watch or even worse, receivership. So on to the budget impasse. So as you may know, the state has not adopted the state budget by the June 30th deadline, which means that not only are we not receiving state subsidies, but we're not receiving funding for our federal programs. So no funding for Title 1, 2, 3, and 4, no funding for our IDEA funding for special education, no funding for Ready to Learn, which we do use for our ESL staff, as well as our pre-K program, and we're not receiving reimbursements for other subsidies such as transportation, Social Security, and retirement, and we're also not receiving other Head Start related subsidies. So during this time right now, we're relying on the cash that we have on hand to maintain operations. So whether that be fund balance, whether that be some local taxes that are coming in, earn income, or other revenue sources that we can draw down from, such as other federal funding that we draw down directly from the federal government. That's what we're relying on at this point in time. But without a resolution to the state budget, this slide shows how we can only rely on that fund balance for so long, and that can only sustain us for so long. So what this shows, as of last week, numbers have changed a little bit, but it showed that as of August 29th, we had, in terms of our bank accounts, we had $89 million in our bank accounts. And if we did our cash flow projections, this line shows the inflow and outflow of our cash, whether it be payrolls, whether it be any earned income tax we might get in, our accounts payable, and also any large payments that we would make, such as debt service, any large payments such as our PSERS contribution, healthcare. All of those show that without any type of state funding coming in or anything changing, that we would have a point in the middle of October where we would dip briefly negative, bounce back up, go negative again, and then when we look at the middle of December, that's when we will continue to go negative, and because we would have no state revenue would have come in for half of the state fiscal year. So right now we're kind of weathering that storm and trying to do whatever we can to stretch out expenditures, try to delay the outflow of cash. We applied for and we received Act 85 relief from the state, which means the state paid for a significant portion of our debt service that was due on the 29th. So the state made a $28.7 million payment on our behalf. If we had to make that payment, we would be in a much worse position right now. So in the interim, we're just making sure we're closely watching all of our payables, making sure that we're not paying anything too early, making sure that we're paying everything as close to the due date, contractual due date as possible. And then also, if we get to that point where we're running low, we do have $22 million in investments that we can begin to draw down, but that will only get us so far, and we would still go to be in December without anything changing at a point in time where we would possibly not be able to make payroll, but we're working very hard to make sure that's not the case. We're hoping for a state budget resolution, and where should the budget impasse continue further, and if we're able to basically eke it out to the beginning of the year, we'll explore doing a tax revenue anticipation note at the start of the year to have that cash flow to bridge us from the beginning of the year until we start receiving our real estate tax revenue. So in terms of budget planning and sort of next steps, a combination of both. So I'm currently, in my department, we're currently conducting a final review of all of the non-personnel expenditures in the budget development file. So anything that was put in by departments, we're reviewing those. We're making sure that the amounts correctly account for anticipated expenditures, making sure that nothing was missed. We're currently using our actuals, and we're hoping that once we get the actuals through August, we're able to further revise our revenues and expenditures to better have a more accurate projection of our expenditures, so that we can use that expenditures and revenues, so we can use that for more accurate budget projections for the 2026 calendar year. And being the interesting year that we're in with the facilities planning process that's been underway, that is under consideration by the board, it kind of forces us to prepare two different budget scenarios. So we'll have a status quo scenario, and we'll have an alternate scenario that reflects what the budget would be if there are any, if the board approves proposed changes. So it's a lot of work, but still need to have both of those in place so the board can be informed of the possible scenarios and the impact. And both of those will be presented at the budget workshop in October that we'll have. I believe it's the second week of October.
We're going to keep it as October 6th, and the meeting will just be presided by Mr. Walker.
Okay.
As I'll be out, yeah.
All right, so October 6th. So that concludes the budget update for September. I know it was a lot of information and in these slides, but just trying to make the board aware of our current financial situation and things that are currently affecting the district. Thank you, Ms. Yord.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. At this time, I'll open it up to any questions from the board. Do we have any questions from folks in the room? Yeah, Ms. Talaferro?
Thank you, Director Yord. And thank you, Mr. Joseph, for your presentation. Just a couple thoughts, but on slide 10, you talked about a millage increase. Are you, are we considering a tax increase for 2026?
So as part of the workshop, I'll present all options and make the board aware of the impact of all of this, but ultimately it's for the board to decide whether it's something that the board is in favor of, but as we'll use the budget workshop in order to provide the board with as much information as possible. So hopefully after those discussions, we'll have a direction that we can go so we can know whether to include a budget, a tax increase in the preliminary budget or not.
Okay, thank you. And then I was curious, I'm trying to remember which slide it was. I did not note it. I'm just curious if there's any understanding of the property tax assessment. I know it's been a little bit of a messy situation, but are we getting any, we haven't really talked about it a lot recently, or at least lately, so is it a shot in the dark? It's probably never going to happen.
So I'm not going to speak out of turn, and I'm not sure if Attorney Sattler can provide us.
Fine. Thank you.
Let me make sure everybody can hear me. So are you asking about the litigation that's pending, or just the state of the reassessment? So the litigation is still pending. The parties have exchanged pleadings, and we're in the discovery phase. So, and that's sort of where it stands right now. It will move forward, but this is the time where each party kind of gets the documents from one another, and this takes a little bit of time. That's about all I can say on that.
Okay, it's fine. Sorry, thank you. It's fine. I don't know. That's always been a touchy subject, but it is one of the things that we have to,
I can say
Take
that
into
that litigation is ongoing, though.
Right.
So there was no preliminary objections made by the county,
Okay.
and that they did just file an answer. So,
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
So I don't have any other real questions, honestly, but I think that, I don't know, I feel compelled to say this because I am very concerned about the state budget impasse and how that is going to, or how that can impact our school district, like many school districts that rely on state funding to educate children. And I think that it's very disappointing that on both sides of the aisle, our Senate Republican friends can't agree with our State House Democratic friends, and I think that it is very difficult. But I do hope, I will always remain hopeful and hope that they can come to a decision on a state budget, because I can't watch another TikTok video or social media post from our legislators going back and forth with each other, knowing that this is actually impacting the children that we are tasked to serve. So I really do hope that a state budget can be passed so that we can do our part in making sure that students are educated, that teachers are paid for their services, and staff are paid for their services, and that we can conduct the business of the school district. and already a challenging financial circumstances that we already have, that we can conduct our business moving forward. So that's all I really wanted to share. But thank you, Mr. Joseph, for your presentation.
Thank you, Director Talaferro. Director Silk, I see a question or a hand raised.
Thank you. I was wondering what, given the budget impasse at the state, and given that there are, you can't hear me?
No, we can hear you a little bit. Dave, can you turn up the volume in the room on the Zoom, please? Try
Is this,
again.
okay, is this any better?
Better, yeah.
Okay. My question is related to the budget impasse at the state, and I'm curious about what kinds of guidelines and hedging we are doing in terms of new items, new expenditures that are coming up. So in particular, we have a whole new slew of board tabs that we are being asked to approve this month. And I could use a little bit of guidance around what hedging and considerations are in place prior to those new board tabs appearing.
So right now, we've taken the approach of looking at our contractual payments going out right now as this draws any further. So if we start to look like it's going to get into October, we may probably execute some discretion as to whether we need to execute any of those proposed contracts that are being brought forward before the board. And then as it draws on, we'll probably have to look at further cost-cutting measures such as restrictions on purchasing or reductions in certain other line items to continue to ensure that we're limiting the amount of expenditures going out.
And thank you for that. So for this month in particular, though, given where we are, you are comfortable with all of the board tabs that are included in September's agenda?
So one thing to point out is just because you approve the board tab doesn't mean we actually have to execute the board tab or execute that contract. So it's a continuous process of us going forward. Right now, I can't say I'm comfortable with us spending any money, but we're going to spend money because we have to pay our staff. So it's just a period of discomfort that me and my staff are navigating, and we're doing our best to make sure that we're keeping the lights on, we're keeping staff paid. So we're taking it a day at a time and trying to forecast as best as possible. And I think we've done certain steps so far, such as applying for the Act 84 relief when we could have. That improved our picture by $28.7 million better than it would have been had we not. So I think we've started doing that, and we're going to continue to do anything we can to make sure we're limiting our expenditures going out the door.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Salk. I think that answered your question, but I can tell from your face that it didn't make you feel any better. We do have a question from Director Piotrowski that Director Talaferro is going to ask.
Okay. Live from the chat, Director Piotrowski asked, when the state budget does pass, will we receive the funds retroactively, like anything that we haven't received to date?
Yes, so we'll go back and receive what we have due net of the advance on the debt service payment. So the state will recoup that, but any of our scheduled payments will be paid shortly after there's a enacted signed budget. So we've gone through these periods of time before, and after the budget has passed, the state's been very, very speedy in terms of getting those payments out the door.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph.
Thank you, Director Talaferro. Are there any questions from other board members in the room? No. If not, I have just one quick question for you, Mr. Joseph. So you mentioned in the course of the presentation that there are going to need to be some structural changes made to our expenditures in order to correct what we're forecasting for 2026. Are you going to present those structural changes as part of the board workshop in October?
So I believe we do have a large structural change that we've all been discussing that has financial impact. So I believe providing the board with more up-to-date numbers that they've requested that encompass all of the potential financial impacts. That's something that we hope to have by the time of the budget workshop to bake into both of those projections. So in addition to having something that shows a couple years out, so those are some of the major structural changes. And then we're also still looking at the status quo scenario to see how much more trim we can make that budget, because we want to present a budget that has exhausted all possible options, and knowing that we can't go too far out and make tons of programmatic changes, because a lot of those changes do still require board approval, and I don't want to propose anything that we haven't thoroughly discussed with the board or make the board aware of. But it's about going through and looking at, let's say some of those vacancies, looking at some of those contracts that we have budgeted that we may not need, looking at expenditure, basically making sure that the expenditures are reflective of what we've had in prior years, to make sure that we're not over budgeting. So we're trying to get as accurate as possible and being less conservative, just to make sure that we're getting that number as low as possible. Because one thing that also helps us, if we have a reduced budget, our payments to charter schools are based on our budget expenditures. So the lower our budget, the lower our payments. So that will help in that front. So we're looking to try to see where we can make sure, looking at the prior couple years of expenditures, where we can actually take that down. And I know one place that was a suggestion of Chief Rudolph was the looking at our substitute services budget and some of the expenditures that we've had, and making sure that we're reflecting that based on what we spent in the prior year. So not having as high of a budget in that, because we're just not expending that amount that we had in years past.
Got it. Thank you for that answer. A follow-up question to that. I know that part of the presentation in October will be around the Future Ready plan and how the board is moving towards that. Aside from the Future Ready plan budget scenario, is there any other feedback that you need from the board, or input that you need from the board at this time, as you start thinking about what some of those structural changes might look like in a status quo scenario in advance of the October workshop?
No specific feedback, but suggestions and feedback is always welcome.
If I come up with a silver bullet to solve our budget problems, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'll chat GPT it. Any other final questions for board members in the room? All right. Well, with that, at this time, if there are no other questions, then I'd like to thank Mr. Joseph for his presentation, and I would like to adjourn this meeting. Have a great evening, everyone.